do business with people they like. And so building those relationships and building a community feel where people feel, hey, I need some help.
Nothing beats getting in a room together and just throwing stuff up on a whiteboard and seeing what sticks and what slowly slides off as you investigate it further.
It's one thing to be able to say, hey, we know what the issues are. It's something entirely different to be able to say, and here's what the really smart CEOs are doing about it.
This is a bit of an unusual one for us this week on The Mind Behind. I'm speaking with Bill Maloukis. Now, I first connected with Bill 2 years ago at an American Chamber event. And for somebody he's got 38 years experience in an engineer and been in his role as the Managing Director of Construction Specialities Australia for 16 of those years, he still stood out as being somebody who was really curious, really kind of wanting to understand everybody around them. I then met some of his team and realised that's not just something he does, that's how he lives. And if anybody's linked in with Bill, you will see his activity, how much he gives to others and how much he actually walks the walk. And if you're not, I would suggest you should. Bill's been involved in the construction industry for all that time. Within Australia, he's worked in some of the most significant projects like Sydney Metro, the Sydney Allianz Stadium, Royal Adelaide Hospital, Salesforce Tower that dominates the skyline just off Sydney Harbour. He's got a real expertise in the business, that's really obvious, but what stands him apart is how he grows his teams and how much he's loved and respected. And I use that word advisedly. He's absolutely loved and respected by his team. And not just that, he's really engaged with the professional development side. He's the deputy of the Engineers Australia College of Leadership and Management Board in Sydney. He's councillor of the Business Sydney Eastern Sydney Regional Advisory Council, and he's the deputy chair of the Greek Australian Society. I have no idea how he packs that into 24 hours a day. But please sit back and listen just to Bill's story and just how inspiring it is just to hear how you can still keep on touching those around you.
Graham, thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Bill, it's really good. This has been a long time coming. I've been really wanting to do this for such a long time, and it's taken us probably a year, and that's all my doing, but I'm glad we're finally here.
Well, and I think, the way we met was quite extraordinary, at an AmCham gala opening, I guess,
Yep.
Opening ceremony where we met. And it was wonderful. We just hit it off and we just had a really good conversation, but I didn't think that in a year's time we would be sitting down and talking, but I'm honoured.
It's really interesting how you're stuck in the mind. So, and it'll be great to have that discussion today, just kind of about your background, your thoughts, because a few things stuck out. But that was a super event in a very prestigious location.
It was,
wasn't it? That's lovely.
It was.
Anyway, Bill, tell us about your background. We always start off here. It's really good on The Mind Behind, just for us to get an idea of the person. So tell us about Bill.
Absolutely. So I am the eldest son of a Greek migrant family that came out in the late 50s. So, Dad ventured out in 1956 from the island of Lesbos. Now,
all right.
You may or may not know that island, but it's on the eastern side. It's in the Aegean Sea. And during that time, it was tough. There wasn't much happening, and there was a call for migrants to come to Australia to help in the workforce, and Dad came out, and Mum followed soon after, about 4 years later, and they both came out on boats. So Dad came out on the Tasmania, and Mum came out on the Patrice, which is a really famous. If you speak to anyone about the Greek migrant stories, the Patrice in particular is a very, very famous ship that hauled many, many migrants across from Europe to Australia. But that's me, and I was born a few years after that. And my life was fairly simple, like most migrant families, they established themselves in Redfern, downtown near the CPD, because back in those days, that's where the factories were.
Right.
And
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
my dad did a variety of labouring jobs, and they all worked there. In particular, he worked at Morris on an assembly line for cars. So that was his first job. And then mum was a homemaker. She basically sewed from home. So, but what really strikes me really interesting about my parents is their work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that they purchased their first home, but what strikes me as really interesting is they paid that home off in 18 months.
Jeez.
Through a variety of renting rooms out, working 2 jobs each, that sort of thing. So it was certainly
impressive.
I guess they didn't have all the frills back in those days. It was just they came here for a purpose, and that's how really we were brought up. Really the hard way. But I have nothing but fond memories of growing up in Redfern, because I know Redfern back in the day was quite a tough neighbourhood. But for me, it was just really pleasurable. And I can remember on the weekends, I would leave the house on a Saturday at 9 o'clock, come back at 6 p.m. There were no phones, there were nothing. We would go and play cricket and football and all of those fun things. And there wouldn't be
real football, Bill. Real football.
Real football.
Real football.
Real football. Or soccer.
Soccer. You mentioned we. Who's we?
Just the gang, the street, all the other kids around, the neighbourhood. I went to a local primary school, Burke Street Primary School, and then what happened is when I turned 14 or 15, my parents finally gave up living in a terrace home, which was quite small, but I know in the UK it's standard.
Yep.
But the Australian dream was to have a 1/4 acre block, and Dad bought in Rosebery, so not too far away, but it was a larger home. And as a result of that, I ended up going to a high school called Randwick Boys, which was just a regular, high school. It wasn't selective or anything like that, but again, had a terrific education. And because my mum absolutely loved, words and education, she really instilled that in me a lot. And I was always fascinated by that. And being the eldest son, you always really don't want to let your parents down, right? So I ended up on that path. But I remember in those days, especially around 1978, when I was in year 10, most of the kids actually would leave school and they would get apprenticeships. Around that time, this computer company came onto the scene called IBM, and it was quite a new thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends went and did apprenticeships with IBM. Others went into government departments, and others worked at Telstra and et cetera, or Sydney Water. So there was this thing where people really didn't go past year 10. They certainly didn't matriculate. They didn't go into year 12. They didn't go into university. But I was a little bit different because I did go all the way. And then when I did my HSC and finished, I had enough marks to go into university. So I only went up the road at the University of New South Wales, and I did a Bachelor of Civil Engineering. So that's where this whole fascination about structures and buildings and architecture really developed. So I guess that's, in a sense, my background. And now I'm in a totally different role, but I think I've really morphed myself over the last 30 years to be what I am, because if I didn't really have any role models at the time, I guess people that were, academics or people that were professionals, my parents were just laborers. But I've really evolved and tried to make a better life, for myself.
It's interesting. You say you don't have any role models, but I'm wondering where we're all influenced by our past, all of us. We get that. But one thing you've mentioned like 2 or 3 times is work ethic. It's work ethic about kind of. So is that something that kind of that was passed on, regardless whether it's kind of the manual or academic side of things? Was that something that was forefront of your mind?
Yeah. I guess if I just go back with the mentors, look, my parents were a big part of my work ethic and the way I was brought up. But I didn't really have any people that I could look to and say, you should go into marketing or you should do a law degree. My parents were simple people and they didn't have that. But definitely what they did instill in me was this desire to better myself and really take my career journey as far as I could. And that's what I've done.
And so bring us right up to date, Bill. What are you doing now?
Okay, so
fascination of buildings and architecture and engineering.
Yeah. So just a really quick fast forward. I finished my engineering degree. I then went back a few years later and did an MBA back at the University of New South Wales. Did that. I worked in a variety of roles. I worked in structural design, so I was designing buildings. I went into project management on site in construction sites. I did all of that. And then I found a little bit of a niche working for building material suppliers. So these are the companies that actually provide the products that go into buildings, as we know them. So I worked for a large organization called CSR, which is a conglomerate at the time. They're very famous because they were known for their sugar. Initially, it started out as a sugar refinery. Colonial Sugar Refinery was what they were called. But I worked as a technical manager in a division called CSR Hebel. So Hebel were lightweight concrete blocks. And that was quite new for me to be in a big corporation and, really providing support to sales teams and the like. So I did that. Then I went across and worked at Boral Masonry. And as I say, I did my MBA. And having done my MBA, I said to my boss at the time, I really would like a change away from technical because I just felt technical was just so focused in one particular area, and I wanted to broaden. And we'd learnt a little bit about marketing and other aspects. So I said I want to do marketing, and I went across and worked in a marketing area at Boral. Looking at products and a whole variety of things. So trying to instill the benefits of those products. So I did that, and I guess fast forward a little bit, we were doing a little bit of restructuring at Boral, and my boss said to me, "Look, I know you're doing a really good job in marketing and specification and the like, but we've got a real need for a sales manager, to run our business." And it was like a $40 or $50 million business at the time.
Yeah.
I said, "Charlie, I don't have any experience to do sales. It's a nothing. It's a nothing. You just, back orders and all that sort of stuff, and you'll be fine." But that was my real first entree into sales. And it's definitely, I was there in charge of a team of about 8 very mature sales managers. And it was something that was really defining for me. I'd never done that before, and it was tough, but eventually I got the hang of it. And I worked in a whole variety of other areas. And then in 2008, to really fast forward, I got an opportunity, I got tapped on the shoulder to be the general manager of the organisation that I'm with, which is called Construction Specialty. So now we fast forward. So it's an American-based, again, building materials supplier, founded in New Jersey. It's global, and I've got this opportunity now to run the Australian division. That's where I am now. When I was there, when I first started, it was a small business, and you know, I've grown it steadily over the years. But this is my 17th year of working for CS now.
I was going to say to you, you told me this before, 17 years is a lifetime. That is a lifetime.
It is a lifetime, but you know, once you're in the mix, and you enjoy it and you enjoy the products, and really everyone here, essentially, I've hired myself. So I do have an affinity. And when you look at the values of CS,
yep,
the most important value is people first. And, you know, I really have a love for the people that we have here.
So is that what's kept you in?
Yeah. It's just, I think that has been a big part, growing an organization. You're really having the opportunity to pull and push all of the levers. I think that's been really important. Having that independence has been great as well, and doing good things, more importantly, and seeing people grow as well along with me.
I'm going to come back to the people thing, because that always seems, every time we have a discussion, that seems to be really, really important for you as the people. I'm going to come back onto the structural and the engineering and the buildings.
Yeah.
Must have worked in some big projects, some prestigious stuff that we would know. What's your favorite, or what's the ones that kind of jump out to you that you've been involved with?
Definitely. One that really is true to mind is, have you ever heard of the ski tube, which is a job down at Perisher Valley? So it's actually a train that goes underneath the mountains, and it ferries people between Perisher Valley, Bullock's Flat, and Blue Cow Ski Resort. I was on that job as a young field engineer, Graham. It would have been in 1989, 90. And it was a fascinating job because it meant that I actually had to live in a chalet at Perisher Valley. So we got there at the end of the ski season. So my role was to actually build a resort up in Blue Cow, and part of being on there, the only way we could move around is jumping in helicopters. And
that's what a tough job you had. Hey?
Yeah, and traversing the mountain that way. So it was an absolutely fascinating job. It was the first time I'd really been away from home. And I'd been away for well over a year. So that was really a defining moment in my life.
Is this kind of one of those ones, every time you're driving past the area, you bore everybody when you're driving past and going, I did that. Oh, look, there's a sign.
Well, most engineers do, you know. It's this thing of pride that you've worked on really significant projects.
Yeah.
Another job that I did work on was the monorail station, you know, the elevated monorail station, which no longer exists. But in 1988, it was kind of a big deal. I mean, it looped around the city, but really went nowhere.
Here's almost 4 years. I'm just checking the date. Almost 4 years ago now, I was in quarantine. As I came into the country, and I was in quarantine because something had happened with a pandemic kind of thing. And I was in a hotel in Darling Harbour, and I studied every part of Darling Harbour. And I remember seeing the monorail station at the end. Do you think I could work out what this was? It absolutely fascinated me for 2 weeks till I could get out and actually have a proper look at it. So, I remember somebody, before I found out, someone mentioned there was a monorail in Sydney, and I kind of went right back to that Simpsons episode and thought, nah, there can't be a real monorail.
Well,
I've seen films of it since. I've managed to find it on YouTube.
yeah, I think it was such a ghastly look across the city. It was really ugly, and the best thing they did is tore it down.
Yeah, I mean, what I would always give a nod to on something like that, it was innovative. Somebody took a risk on that to do, to try something really different. And you can see that in cities, you can see that in structures where certain cities are prepared to take a little bit of a gamble and do something a little bit different. Like, I'm exactly the same as you. I know, that I was in construction in the UK, and there's still buildings that I will point out. Everybody in here knows about them. I had somebody who visited Manchester a couple of years ago, and she took photographs going, is this it? Is this what we've been listening to for the last 2 years? So yeah, okay, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So you're kind of well established in the business. I hear you talk about people a lot. Why is that such an important thing for Bill?
Look, people are everything, Graham. At the end of the day, there's no way that I can do it all. And once it was described to me as I'm the pilot, but all the people are the thrust. So I can direct the plane in whatever direction we need to go in, but without the thrust of the people and the energy, you just really can't get anywhere. So people are important, and just having a really great team behind you, it is just so satisfying. But it's a challenge. It's always a challenge. There's always something that will always come up, but you've really just got to keep pushing through. I did a review just earlier, one-on-one with someone, came into my office. He was a younger guy, and he said, our meeting was set for 2:00. And he said, I've been watching my clock for the last 15 minutes, worrying about coming to see you. And I said to him, Jackson, there was nothing to worry about. I'm actually excited to have a one-on-one with you and really learn about your story. And I always try and connect on a personal level, Graham, with that person, to really try and understand what makes them tick. Because if I can understand what makes them tick, it's better for everyone.
Isn't it interesting when you get in a position, I've seen this many times, when people get in a kind of a position of seniority. They're very open, very kind of, it's still that seniority still recognised elsewhere. And things that we think is a kind of a natural conversation, and we think we've got a great relationship, there's still that edginess, there's still that kind of level of doubt sometimes about a conversation or going in and having a one-on-one. We ran a webinar this week about rethinking conflict in the workplace. And I just flashed up the question, just kind of the statement, we need to talk. And what did that? And we had a couple of hundred people.
I'm in trouble.
Webinar. Yeah, exactly. Everybody went, oh no, problem. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
There was a few sweary words in there as well on the feedback. But
yes.
Very little going, fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. Our brains go into this kind of negative point.
Yeah. And can I just say, at the end of my one-on-one with this young fellow Jackson, we spent an hour together, but I just feel that he just got so much more out of it. He's now engaged. He wants to do better. And I said to him, I've been watching you, and you're doing amazing things. You're going to go places in this organization. That's lifted him. Mm-hmm. And I meant it.
And again, we think, okay, we might be in trouble, and we also play ourselves down. It's kind of this natural human trait that we sometimes need other people to point it out, even if we know we're doing a good job. Even if we know, we've got to go. I'm curious about how your leadership philosophy has evolved as you've been in. You mentioned kind of coming all through all these different roles, coming to the background you've had, then kind of doing engineering, and then thrown into sales and and then into this. How's your engagement with people evolved?
It's certainly developed over the years, and I think definitely it took a substantial turning point in my early 40s. It was like I can really even picture the day, because I went to an orientation program, and It was for an organisation called Tech, or you might know it in the UK as Vistage.
All right, yeah. I've interviewed one of the board members from the US.
There you go. So it's been around forever, and my boss Ken Hart said to me, "I'm in Vistage, Bill. You should do something similar for your growth and development." And I remember going to the orientation, but what's significant about it is that that's where I think I know I got my first really good mentor.
Right.
Just the listening skills, the ability to assist me through things that I thought were amazing, complex things. He just really, chunked them down and really helped me. And look, he's still my coach and mentor, and we meet monthly. And I think from that, it's really given me the foundation. Ultimately, the decision is always mine after we always speak. But he phrases things in a particular way that just makes you consider all options.
Now you've pricked up my ears. You've got a coach and mentor. Why is that important to you?
Look, you never stop learning. One thing about me is I'm really a very, very curious person. I just love learning things about people. So this fellow John from Tech, he was obviously one of the key people in my life. Another person, Paul, was like the networking king. And he was just another significant role model that came into my life. And he actually taught me, the power of meeting people, being open, smiling, just being a gregarious sort of a chap, just can open so many doors and opportunities. And the other thing he always said to me is, Bill, whenever you go out, always have business cards on you. Do not miss that opportunity. I know it's so, 2000 or whatnot, and I know we've moved to digital now, but he instilled that in me, because what he was really saying is don't miss the opportunity for a connection and a follow-up. So those two people have really, made a significant difference, because prior to that, I was quite an introverted person.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got to tell you, I did bring out a business card last week, and the person giggled, which wasn't a good look. So what, if you were an introverted person, what would you regard yourself as now?
Look, I'm more extroverted, so I actually look forward to going to networking events with excitement, because I'm thinking, I just wonder, who can I meet? Not in the fact that I want to do business. I'm not here to do business. I'm just here to make a connection. And I think one thing about me now is most of the connections I have are not in the architectural or engineering space. They're actually in a whole diverse functions, in HR, in accounting, law, whatnot, insurance, all sorts of things. So I look at all of the different people that I meet, and a lot of people are in service, service industry, so highly unrelated to what I do, but I still really excited to meet them, because they're just really good people, and it's fun going out and listening and meeting people.
I'm a great believer that if you meet good people, good things happen. Kind of like it's. I do remember, being kind of involved in this side of things in the UK and the US as well. And what was the phrase? That's a great phrase. And a networking event tends to be a room full of people trying to sell to a room full of people that don't want to buy.
Correct. Correct.
So what are you going to do? And we differentiate it by there's going networking and there's building a network. And it kind of feels like what you do is build a network. You build a network of people around. Sometimes not even clear on exactly why we connect or what happens. But this might even be an example of it. You know, a short kind of 15-minute interaction a year later.
Yeah.
We're
Look at how we met. Look at how we met. You know,
exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
I don't think I was trying to sell you anything, but it was great to meet. We had a good chat. Because I think, you know, trying to sell to someone, and it happens to us all the time, it's a real turnoff.
What's one of the challenges you've seen maybe with working with people, either internally or externally? So when you're building a network, have you seen something that's kind of maybe thrown you off a little bit, or even where you're invested in someone or some people internally, and it's like it's kind of not come off? When has it not worked?
I guess, you know, you do invest in people all the time, and you give your energy and time, and you know, you really put your heart on your sleeve, you know, at the end of the day. And sometimes the fit is just doesn't work out, Graham, you know. I guess I don't look at it now with, like, of course it's disappointing, but I don't look at it as, you know, I shouldn't have got that guy into my business, because I think every experience allows you, the next time you hire someone or meet someone, you've got better control in terms of what you're actually looking for. So it doesn't always work out, and it's got to be right for both sides. And I always say to people that start in the business with us at CS, I say that, you know, I'm looking for the right person, but you've got to also look for the right company. It's got to be a match that, you know, we're both happy with.
And even when there's not a match there, it doesn't make it a bad person. And I think a lot of people have kind of that difficulty of separating that there's not an alignment maybe for a role or a job or a connection.
Yeah,
they could still be very, very good people.
Well, I just think that, you know, especially younger people now, they've got different demands. You know, they want to work from home. They want to be flexible. You know, they want to rise above you know, their capacity really quickly. You know, but I think sometimes, you know, just the simple things in life, they're just invaluable. You know, you've got to work your way through the process, because if you don't, you're going to become very, very unstuck, and you see it all the time.
We're running at the moment we're running a program for a construction in the construction industry company, a global program on generational integration, and it was originally called generational diversity.
Yeah,
and we're like, hold on a minute, it's more about integrating Gen Z overtake baby boomers this year. They've already done it in the workplace. So now we've got a significant Gen Alpha will be here in about 5 years' time.
Correct.
And then we will have all the now they're the problem. And I'm always curious, how do we adjust for that kind of stuff? All those different attitudes, different ideas, different values. What do you do within the business to kind of make sure that everybody's included?
Yeah, look, I guess what I try and do is, and it's worked successfully for me, is that especially we're in a meeting and some of the people are quieter or they're not as vocal, I'll always go to them and ask for them for their opinion. I'll say, you know, Jennifer, what do you think? Can you tell us how you're feeling? Because I know that they really want to be avoided. They don't want to be asked, but we'll actually, you know, make sure that we go right around and get everyone's opinion. I think because I do value it, you know. I think I'm curious about how they feel, because if we want a truly integrated and diverse organization, and, you know, you've heard a lot of literature about, you know, the most highest performing companies are the ones that are diverse, and, you know, within inclusion and all of that. You've got to draw that out. You've got to really seek their opinion, because there are we have about 35% females in our organization, and I would say most of the top performing salespeople are females.
Right.
You know, they're just absolutely amazing. You know, they're trailblazers here. They do really, really well, and they support each other, and, you know, I support them as well.
It sounds like you kind of created a culture where ego isn't kind of part of it. We can be proud of what we do.
Yeah.
And that's difficult in a sales team. That's difficult.
I think, look, we do know that, in selling, you do have to have a bit of ego about you, because you're going to get the door slammed in your face so many times, and you've got to be resilient.
I agree, Bill. I wasn't born with this nose. I was standing too close to doors at times.
But I think there are good salespeople, and then there are great salespeople, and the great salespeople really ask those fantastic questions that makes the customer really think about it. They always say, I'll do business with someone that I know, like, and trust. One builder once said to me, I don't always go to your build because you're not always the cheapest, but I know that if I ever have a problem, you'll always fix it for me straight away. And it's just that reliability. And I guess that's what I'm there. You don't always get it right. You try and get it right most of the time. But I know that personally, if I know someone, I've got a relationship, I've built rapport with them, I've invested time with them, and we do let them down, I'll make sure straight away. I won't wait till the next day. I'll immediately try and fix that.
I'm a great believer that when a company does something wrong, because we all do things wrong, the real test of a company, you'll see the real values and the culture of a business is how they fix it. And that can be the most powerful thing ever.
It's not really about laying blame, and
no, not at all.
One of our values is integrity as well. And for us, integrity is everything, and it's really it's our word, it's our branding, and we do go and rectify that situation, and it's worked well for us.
Bill, we've just spoken about when things go wrong, might be an opportunity to fix things. Is there something you've come across in business in the past? You used to think, oh, this is fatal, this is a horrible big thing that we need to deal with, and now you think, yeah, we can get on with it.
Yeah, look, I think in that situation, I always put myself in the customer's position.
Yep.
So we're very, very customer centric. So I always try and think about how have we affected that customer, and how can we turn things around for them. There are always issues that you face every day.
Yep.
And I think just the level of experience, Graham, that I've got at the moment, the resilience. I see people carrying on, but what I try and do is just simplify it. And in a lot of cases, it's just this code of conduct, the way we are around our fellow human beings, the way we react with each other, just managers. I think just working in silos is quite problematic as well. We're trying to integrate, and I think if the heads of the department have got a really strong working relationship, it's always better. So I think from that point of view, it's really not about me anymore. It's not what people think of me. I'm just there to help the issue out. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but
I think it does, Bill, because I think potentially when we're maybe a little bit early in our career, we get involved with everything. We think we need to solve everything. And sometimes it's not about a process of resolving. Sometimes it's just about an approach. Sometimes it's just kind of being true to ourselves. That guides us to what the answer is, even if we don't like it, because sometimes we don't. It kind of gives us, let's keep true to our values here. We keep true to our values. We're in a good space, regardless of the time of the cost, whatever.
Yeah, I think, look, at the end of the day, I'm in a different stage of my career now.
Yep.
I don't think I've got anything to prove anymore. So I'm not really there for the title or the recognition or any of that. To me, I'm really looking at how can I help people along the journey. And we talked about mentoring and coaching, and I didn't get that till quite late. But I'm involved with I'm the vice president of the Greek Australian Society, and I'm also the director of mentoring. So what I'm trying to do there is is try to set up our young professionals and align them with people that are seasoned and executives that, you know, have been in the workforce for at least 20 years, and just help them along the journey. Because my philosophy is that I always feel that if you have a good mentor, especially in your, at least you've got to get a mentor by the time you're 30. Don't leave it too late the way I did it at 40 or 45. It's still doable, but it's just so much better, because the reason I say that is because I feel that you can really fast track your career by at least 10 years by having a really, really good mentor, and especially the work that you do, you know, in your organization as well, you can really shortcut the process.
So I've got to get one by 30. I've got a couple of years yet then, if I've got to get one by 30. Yeah.
Absolutely. You're nearly there, but
nice one.
You'll be fine.
Love your attitude, Bill. Right. So when we get coached and mentored, we get feedback, don't we? We kind of, there's that. Has there been any feedback that's been tough to take?
Yeah, look, I guess this was in my late 20s, and I was the technical manager of this company that I told you I was working at CSR. But I remember my boss saying, Bill, you need a sense of urgency. And as someone in their 20s, you know, it really didn't resonate with me, because I really didn't understand. It would have been probably better if he says, you know, you need to meet your deadlines. But he was quite a polished executive, and he said, to have a bit of sense of urgency about you. So I didn't, at the time, I didn't understand it to the full extent of what I should have. But, you know, reflecting on it a few years later, I did. And then I was really very targeted about, you know, meeting my deadlines, meeting my KPIs, and ensuring I always did a good job. So yeah, that was something that still resonates with me a lot.
Just final 2-3 questions, Will. What makes you smile in business? What makes you smile?
Well, I think you know, just obviously being successful.
Mm-hmm.
That's happy. That makes me happy, because at the end of the day, you know, we're working in a commercial organization, so we need to have success. And sales, unfortunately, it's binary, Graham. And what I mean by that, you either win or you lose.
Yeah. And
a lot of people say, oh, but you win or you learn. But yeah, and I accept that. So there's an element of that. But there's nothing better than when you toil away, especially in the business that we're in. You know, we have front-facing salespeople, and their job is to go and meet with architects, and you know, they'll get our products, which are premium products, specified on a drawing.
Yep.
And then, you know, 18 months down the track, because you've got a really long lead time, 18 months down the track, your products are ordered, and then they appear in a building, and then you've got that. That really makes me smile when you can show, you know, other people, and you know, you gave the classic example earlier about, oh, did you design that as well, Graham, or did you build that as well? But that's ultimately, that's our products are tangible.
Yep.
So, you know, we have things like, for example, handrails that go into hospitals. And someone said to me the other day, I was in hospital the other day. I said, are you all right? Oh, yeah, I'm fine. But did you know we had our handrails that went in that particular job at the P&N hospital?
I've done it so many times. Yeah, agreed.
Very, very proud. So that makes me smile, that people are engaged and happy about work and really want to be fulfilled. So that makes me smile.
What traits do you think are needed to work within kind of your industry and the way that it goes, maybe in sales or whatever? Because right away, patience comes to mind here. If we're going in, we're getting products specified, and there's that long lead-in to it, and projects like that could be delayed really, or not could be, they are delayed on a kind of a weekly basis, where we think something's going to start in a year's time, and it's 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. So I'm guessing patience is one of them. is that what other traits you think are really important?
Look, I think you've really got to connect with your customers. You know, I think you've really got to you got to be solution focused. You know, especially there's no point just offering a me too product. Especially, you know, with architects, you're trying to promote something that is premium. And if you cannot talk about the differences, if you can't talk about the way that the product is going to make someone feel at the end of the day, and you really can't display that, they won't pay for it. I mean, as hard as we are trying to specify our products and get them onto jobs, builders and contractors are trying to value engineer our products out. Because unfortunately, you know, builders go in with very, very skinny margins. And, you know, the only way that they can recoup some of that margin is to value engineer products out and really look for alternatives. Now, are the alternatives as good as ours? I say no. But you would be surprised. Some architects, although they may not have as much decision and they can't really help you, they will really fight for you. If you develop a great relationship with an architect, they will fight for you with the builder to maintain your product. So I think you need patience, you need resilience, but also you need to have a lot of opportunities. You just can't go in with You can't go in with 5 opportunities. You've got to have 50, because all of our sales managers have got budgets that they should be meeting and achieving. You can't do that with half a dozen opportunities. You need to have at least 50. You've got to have a lot of balls in the air at the moment, because, as I say, the Australian construction industry is really very competitive, and I'm sure it is globally around the world as well. But unless you have something significant to offer, or you're solving some problem that they can't get anywhere else, you'll be swapped. You'll be swapped really, really quickly.
Yeah. Used to love working with architects, designers, and kind of bringing things to life. Just seeing kind of what they put down on paper and almost trying to get underneath the skin. It's like, why have you done this? What's behind it? And really seeing that. Final question, Bill. We always love our guests to set a challenge. Set a challenge for well, maybe any listeners that they could kind of do in the next week or two. Kind of things we've had. The latest one was read a very specific chapter of Shakespeare in the Merchant of Venice, which was lovely. It may be going into kind of the most difficult rooms of where we don't think we should be, but that's where our clients are going to be. What would be a challenge? What's a stretch? Something that you learned that, you know what, this could stand me out.
Well, we've talked about getting a mentor. So I guess, you know, that is really, really important. I think the other important thing is there are a lot of seminal books out there. You know, obviously with Dale Carnegie and all of that, there's some fantastic literature out there. I think really carve out some time to read and learn. So I look at these books that have been written, especially in the business areas, and I think someone has actually dedicated 40 years of their life, and you can buy this book for $30, and you can be so educated and ahead of all of your peers. But unfortunately, we don't choose to invest that time. So I think it's really, really important to carve out some time weekly, whenever you can, whenever it suits you. So 2 things: read, you know, especially those seminal books, and we all know the, you know, Simon Sinek books and all of that. Another book which I found really interesting was The Richest Man in Babylon by George S.
It's a long time since I've read that one. Yeah.
It's an easy read.
Yeah, it really is.
And if you are 25 years old, I highly recommend you read that book. You know, it's all about paying yourself first. Really, really important. And if you don't know what I'm talking about or what Graham's, suggesting, you've read that book as well, I highly recommend that.
Yeah.
It's a terrific read. And look, there's nothing better than getting a mentor, someone that is, I think, external to your company, better, someone that's at arm's length away, and they can really add a lot of value, make you think differently.
I'm sorry, I did say that was the last question, but I've got another last question. How do we choose a mentor? What do you think is a prerequisite to be able to choose that?
There are a lot of, there are a lot of chambers of commerce and, organisations, training organisations out there. I mentioned the Greek Australian Society, but there are a lot of, I'm part of Engineers Australia. I'm actually the deputy chair of the College of Leadership and Management. We have mentoring programs as well. I think whoever you get, you will know, you've got to know if there's a connection. If there is no connection because things like, my mentor doesn't show up or he doesn't respond, he's ghosted me. That's not a good
bit of an issue, isn't it?
Yeah. But you would be surprised how many people sign up and say, yeah, I'll be your mentor. And then they're checking their phone or doing other things. And you really want that 1 hour, at least a month, as a check-in and full attention to what you're going through. And, I've had the pleasure of mentoring quite a few people in early part of their career. And it could be as simple as can you help me get a job, or, just define what I'm trying to do. And so that's what I would do. I would keep moving around until you have that chemistry with them. And but once you do, you're on a path to success.
So don't be afraid to don't just take the first person that's there because that's what's there. Feel free to make sure that connection's right.
Yeah, and if that person isn't right, don't just throw away mentoring.
Yeah.
You've just got to say, well, I'll just try someone else.
Yeah.
And then it'll be the best investment of your time, I can guarantee you.
Bill, you're an absolute star. It's been a pleasure. It's everything I thought it would be.
Thank you, Graham.
So much for coming on. I look forward to grabbing that coffee or beer with you soon.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.